The Godox SL60 has been called the Aputure 120D killer. But can the Zuma LED60, a lesser known knockoff, kill the Godox? Well, that's a lot of light deaths already. I was thinking about getting the Godox as a cheap secondary light when I came across the Zuma LED60. At $85.46, including shipping and tax, I thought, why not? Now, to be fair, I don't own the Godox or the Aputure, so beyond the paper specs, this isn't a comparison video. But the questions about value are the same, so here we go. The Zuma is quote-unquote a cheap Chinese knockoff, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's lower quality. Almost everything is made in China, so Chinese companies have the option to pick and choose higher and lower quality goods to design the product and the price point that they want. Too often, we think about the value of a light only as a key light. For a key, we need excellent color, silence, power, and flicker-free light. Portability and ease of setup are helpful too, but we don't need great color or silence on our rim, ambient, or environmental lights. And so it's for that reason that I was willing to experiment with $85 on what I thought was a pretty good bet. The Zuma actually has a great form factor for this type of fixture. It's really small, just slightly larger than its reflector. It's all metal, the only plastic is the lever. It doesn't require a brick or a converter, and it's a Bowens mount, which means it allows for professional modifiers. The only bummer is that the light cover is about twice the size that it needs to be, taking up extra space when packed. And there's no case for it, but I probably wouldn't use the case anyway. Now, I compared this light to my key, which is a Falcon Eyes RX24 TDX. This is a powerful, high-quality light that I personally love, despite the ridiculous power brick and portability issues. Now, to my surprise, at full power, the Zuma matched the light output of the Falcon Eyes. At 3 feet, I metered ISO 200, shutter 60, and an aperture of 5.6 on both lights. That's about 5,300 lux at 1 meter. The beam and the spread are different, of course, with the Falcon Eyes being bigger and more flattering light, and the Zuma will probably lose power quicker with modifiers. Now, I don't have a spectrometer, so I compared the color on an RGB scope. I filmed this with the Sony a7S II, which is notorious for color shift, so I didn't really expect perfect grays out of either light. Sure enough, my Falcon Eyes dialed into 5600K, had higher blue and green levels on the scope. Now, the Falcon is an excellent color rendition light, so I believe the shift is in the Sony camera itself. Now, to my surprise, the Zuma had nearly identical image. Both required similar adjustments to even out the RGB, which suggests that the Zuma is at least 95 CRI, and I didn't notice a color shift at lower output either. Now, I'm using the light currently shooting through a scrim reflector, so you can actually see it here in action. During my color test, I was standing about 8 inches away from the Zuma, so the camera would be behind the light and I wouldn't get any diffraction. I actually had to turn the light back on after the test in order to listen for fan noise. This light is really quiet, professionally quiet. And in the 20-minute light test at full power, the Zuma didn't heat up either. Now, the Achilles heel of cheap LED lights is flicker. That's because cheap LEDs pulse at a lower light output in order to reduce the amount of light. They're really firing at full capacity and then reducing the level by interrupting the flow. This means that when you shoot at higher frame rates, you can catch the dark portions of the pulse in the frame, creating a flicker. Now, I couldn't recreate flicker with the Zuma, even shooting at 10% power and 250 frames per second. The Zuma isn't using a pulse to reduce its output, which is pretty nice. Now, I haven't had a chance to use the Zuma in a real-world setting, but I was impressed that it performed so well in a studio test. The Zuma isn't just a solid secondary light, it can perform as a key light as well. The only real question is durability. Will the light hold up over time? Now, obviously, the worst case scenario for any professional is to show up on a shoot and have your main light fail. For full disclosure, this is actually my second Zuma light. The first one showed up dead on arrival. This one had an extra fuse in the box, so I suspect that the first one had a dead fuse when it showed up. The light itself is all metal. It doesn't rattle, it doesn't heat up, and so there's no real reason to suspect that it'll fail, but I can't speak to the internal wiring or the components. That's your gamble. And I personally probably won't use it as a main light, just because the $550 Falcon Eyes is more versatile. Though it is possible that if I were traveling and I didn't have space for the Falcon, or if I knew I only had a minute to set up, I would grab this one instead. As a secondary light, I'm really looking forward to putting this little guy into play. On a final note, I will say that my eBay dealer was great. I was able to return the first light for free, and he sent another by 2-day mail. I'm sure that 3 rounds of shipping pretty much destroyed his profit margin. So his link is below. And if you're thinking about buying one, check him out. I don't get a commission or anything like that. It's just a good deed for a good deed. In sum, I'll say that at $85, it's hard to go too far wrong with this Zuma light. It's a great choice for beginners and also for professionals who want to add to their kit.